I was minding my own business at work when I was approached by a coworker who said they had a neighbor who had a mower that had some issues and needed fixing, otherwise they'd have to buy a new one. Of course, I offered to help because I hate to see anyone drop $500 for a new overpriced mower in today's market. But when I got it, I was in complete shock and trying to wrap my brain around how such a new mower could look so bad. In today's video, we take a look at this Toro lawnmower, and the problem is that it starts and runs just fine. However, it wants to slow down and almost stop when cutting tall grass. And if that wasn't bad enough, the self-propel is not working, which makes this mower really tough to use. Now, I may have already fixed this mower in a different video, so if you want to see that video, there should be a link to it at the top of the screen or at the end of the video. But before I fixed it, I had to give it a quick cleaning, that way I don't get dirt in places like inside the carb, the fuel tank, or even inside the engine. Now while I clean this mower, I'm going to talk about the various ways I've seen mowers being mistreated and other basic maintenance items that are overlooked, and I'm sure I'm even guilty of it in some way. So how is it possible for me, the guy that's always talking about how you need to take care of your stuff, could possibly mistreat his own equipment? And the answer is, I'm only human and mistakes do happen. It looks like the air filter was changed at some point, and apparently the spark plug was also recently replaced in an effort to fix the issues with the engine slowing down. No, I do have to applaud their efforts because most people wouldn't even do anything, most would just keep using it until it stops. They also told me they added oil to the engine, but they're not sure if they put too much in though. Yet again, I have to thank them for putting in the effort to try and save this engine because they really didn't have to. And surprisingly, it would appear that they were correct in realizing that they may have put too much oil into the engine. It is definitely overfilled, and I wouldn't want to use this mower this way, at least for long. But it will have some impact on how the engine runs, but not to the extent they're talking about, which means there's got to be another reason for it bogging down. Now I do want to switch gears and talk about the self-propel system, which is Toro's personal pace system. It uses a sliding handlebar to put tension on the drive belt, and the more you push, the more power is delivered to the wheels. But over time, as the belt wears down, the cable isn't able to move enough to transfer that power like it should. Let's start it up and show you what it's doing, and also see how the controls work for the drive. Now as you can see, the engine started just fine, however there was one small problem that I'll talk about here in a bit. But in the meantime, I want to loosen the anchor for the drive cable so that I can adjust the cable to deliver more tension to the drive belt. So I moved the cable down 3 clicks just to start off with, and we'll add more if we need to. We'll start it back up and see if that made any difference. So it looks like the cable just needed an adjustment to get the self-propel working again, but I thought it could be a little bit better, so I ended up moving the cable down 2 more clicks. After the adjustment, I was very happy with how it was engaging and how much effort was needed to get it to work. Now I didn't get the engine too hot, but it is summertime and it's really hot outside, so the oil should be warm enough to drain out. And it's a good thing that I'm changing it because even though they have been keeping up with the oil level, it appears that this oil hasn't been changed in a very long time. Now if you couldn't tell, there was way too much oil in this engine, and it could have been interfering with the engine's moving parts, which could be part of the reason why it was bogging down in tall grass. But the most likely reason for a mower to bog down is a blade that's dull, which is definitely the case here. Now having a sharp blade will make the engine not have to work as hard, and you'll see better performance from the mower as well. The other reason would be having the mower set much too low, which means more grass to mulch, and combine that with a dull blade and you'll have the very situation this mower was experiencing. After sharpening the blade, I then installed it and also double checked that the blade is facing the right direction, otherwise the mower could have more issues with it. Now before I go on, I do want to give this mower a good cleaning for 2 very good reasons. The first one is because I want to make sure the cooling fins on the engine are not covered in dirt, otherwise it could overheat and cause more wear on the engine. And the cleaner I'm using is a heavy-duty degreaser from my local freight store, and to help get it on the equipment, I put it into a used spray bottle. Now the other reason I want to clean this mower is because I want to keep dirt from getting to the sensitive areas on this engine where I intend on working at. Now remember when I tried to start the engine and I mentioned that it had a minor issue? Well, that issue was that in the middle of my pull, I noticed that the handle tried to pull back out of my hands. Now there could be two reasons for this to happen, but considering the information I know about the user of this mower, I'm going to guess the issue is one of the most neglected items for this type of engine. Now the most likely reason would be that the valve lash on this overhead valve engine is out of tolerance and needs to be put back into spec. Now after spraying a lot of dirt off the mowing deck, I finally found the label on the mower that shows the model and serial number, which is what you'll need when trying to find parts for everything that's not related to the engine, such as the drive belt. But if you want to find the parts for the engine, you'll need to find a label somewhere on the engine that hopefully hasn't fallen off. Now you will need to be mindful because some parts were only made for a very short time, and you might find that sourcing certain parts will be very difficult. Now luckily for us, the self-propel only needed an adjustment, but if we needed to replace the drive belt, which is sized at 3/8 by 35 inches, it's priced between $9 to $15 depending upon where you get it at. Now fortunately, the transmission was not the issue this time, but if you're unlucky enough to need one of those, the price for it will be between $75 and $120. Now the good thing is that this mower is only several years old, which is typically not enough time to require a new transmission or even a drive belt. However, depending upon how you use this mower, after 10 years or so of service, you should start to notice some serious wear on all the parts on this mower. And what that means is that this mower is due, or more than likely overdue, for some basic and possibly even more advanced maintenance. That way it'll last for another handful of years, otherwise if left alone, this mower will start to have some very serious issues. Now I was surprised to see this mower last this long with basically no maintenance whatsoever, which is pretty awesome in my book. So what kind of maintenance schedule would I follow if I got a new mower then? Well, the simple answer would be to follow whatever the owner's manual says. But for me, after the first year of ownership, I would make sure the oil was changed and that the blade was sharp, and that's pretty much it. I would then continue with that plan for a while until at some point I would clean or just replace the air filter and eventually check the valve lash. Although if you know me, I doubt I'd ever buy a new mower, and that's because finding them for free makes more money sense than buying one. Of course, I'm sure I'll have to break down and buy a new one sometime in the future, but by then all the gasoline mowers will be gone and replaced, so I'll have no choice but to get one of the electric ones then. I don't know if I mentioned it before, and I don't know if it matters much, but the person who owns this mower is a senior citizen who insists on using a gasoline mower and would rather use this than a riding mower. And that's the reason why it's so important to make sure the self-propel works, and with little to no effort as well. Unfortunately, the way I usually put it in a lot of my videos is that the electric start mowers and the ones with self-propel are meant for older users, but I don't see it that way. I see these extra features as just that. I don't see them as senior citizen aids meant for those that need them, but it's nice to have them when you need them. Now, to be honest, I hope that when I get to be 80 years old, I'll be out there mowing my yard and being as independent as possible. But who knows what it'll be like in 10 to 30 more years in the future. At that point, I figured I'd be mowing my yard with a remote control drone while sitting in my house nice and cozy. I will say one thing about the future of small engines, and that is I hope it does make it easier for people to use them. There won't be the smell of gasoline, oil, and exhaust fumes, but if it makes it easier for me, I'm all in for it. I, along with a lot of the other viewers, have talked about having our gasoline machines until the end of time, but let's face it, there's really no fighting it sometimes. However, a good peaceful protest works just as well. As you can see by the label on the fuel tank, this mower really isn't all that old, and even though the maintenance is a bit late, at least we're doing it now instead of later. You can also see the label that identifies the specific engine on this mower, which is what you'll need to help find parts for it if you should ever need it. I was also trying to figure out what this sticker was telling me about the fuel in the gas tank. Does it want a full tank, or does it want it to be mostly full when storing the mower? Now, I will say that the way this mower stores by standing up on its rear wheels and the handlebar supports is very ingenious, and whoever made that design, you sir or ma'am deserve a raise. Now, the amount of floor space that you can get back by storing it in this way is almost enough to justify the high price for this mower. But would I choose to buy this expensive mower? And the answer is yes, and that's based on the self-propel design along with the vertical storage. However, if you didn't know this, Toro is my second choice of mower brands right behind Honda, only because I like the way the Honda cuts the grass. So we finally finished spraying down the last part of this mower, and before I put it back together, I need to let it completely dry out. Otherwise, I could risk causing rust to form on certain parts of the mower, or more importantly, the engine. So it's been about 4 hours since the last time you saw this mower, and I moved it to a different part of the yard because of the shade, but as you can see, it looks much better now. Now, I didn't know what the finish was like on this paint before I cleaned it, but it turns out it was in really good condition under all that dirt. Too bad the sticker on the front of the mower is a bit scratched, but I'd take a scratched up sticker versus bad paint any day. Not that it needs it, but I'm also going to make sure the spring in the recoil assembly won't get rusty after all the cleaning it's been through. After that, we can then start to put everything back on this mower, and then I'm going to tell you what my thoughts are about this mower. Now, I don't normally praise the owners of the mowers that I work on, but the fact is that they had put too much oil into the engine is far more than what most other people would even bother doing. And for that, I'd like to thank them for caring enough to do it, although I would imagine it's because they grew up in a time where putting oil in a gasoline engine was very commonplace. Unlike today where most people are just looking for a charge port on their EV. Now that Honda is leaving the market, I guess I can't really say that I prefer to have a Honda anymore, so I guess I'll have to phrase it like this. If I were to recommend any mower brand right now, it'd have to be a Toro, but only because of the personal pace system on it. The front-wheel drive versions are okay, but they don't seem to last as long, and they don't have as much pulling power as proven by a video a few years ago. Also, if it's in the budget, pay the extra money for the vertical storage feature. Then you'll realize just how much space you can get back in your garage or storage shed. The only thing that would make this mower any better, at least in my book, would be for it to have a key start so that you don't have to pull on the rope to start it. Now, most don't seem to care for that feature, but I think it's pretty cool, and if I ever get bored, I'm going to have to consider getting a solar panel to help charge it. And finally, I don't mind this engine being on this mower. I think it's a great engine, and to be honest, I wouldn't care if it had any other major brands of engine on here. But if Toro ever puts a no-name engine brand on here from some faraway place, I'll have to take back my recommendation, so hopefully that never happens. So my question is, would you want a mower like this with a well-recognized engine and a great self-propel, or would you just want a simple push mower instead? Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions about this project or about your own projects, and I hope to see you in the next video.